Cheers, everyone. It's I, Sleepy Reader, aka Damien, with a super late comic book countdown. I've got, excuse me, I've got about 12 comics. I have 12 comics that I'm going to count down from 12 to 1 and give you a little bit of my thoughts on them. And today is New Comic Book Day, so these are the comics from exactly a week ago. It took me a long time to get around to reading these, partially due to busyness, partially due to some of these comics I did not have fun reading them, and I kept putting them down and picking them back up. And maybe I should have just tossed them aside, but I felt like I've got them, I've got to get through them. So, and then there were some other comics that I got, which a few others that I haven't gotten around to reading yet. Um, there's American Vampire 1976, because I'm a couple issues behind on this. This is number 3. I hadn't planned to get this, but then I remembered, oh, it's got Raphael Albuquerque artwork. So I just always want more Raphael Albuquerque. He's become more and more a favorite artist of mine. And then I got this Archie Christmas special. I will hopefully get a chance to read that with my daughter, or she'll read it. We'll each read it on our own. I also got back issue number 124. I've read a little bit of this so far. What was it? I started reading about the Creeper, and there's a whole Man-Thing article in here, and there's an article on all the horror characters from Atlas Comics, the ill-fated, short-lived comic company from when, 1973 or so. I can't even find the article, but I'm kind of excited to read that because I don't know. I have this childhood obsession with Atlas Comics. And this is last week at the store, I picked up Adventure Man in this giant hardcover. You can see how big it is compared to a comic book. I already bought all 6 issues that this includes, or is it 5? But the price was right, $24 plus a discount for a huge album size, a little bigger than a European album, I think. And I'd heard someone talking about it, how beautiful it was, and there is something about the art by the Dodsons. I was going to say Hobsons, by the Dodsons, that looks particularly appealing in this larger size. So maybe I will reread Adventure Man sometime soon just to enjoy it on that size level. And it kind of begs the question, had I known in advance that it was going to come out in such a beautiful hardcover right away, maybe I wouldn't have been getting the single issues. I don't know. So on to my countdown. My first one at number 12 is a new AWA Upshot comic called Bite Size. I put this on my pull list sight unseen because I enjoyed some of the other AWA comics, and it was written by Colin Bunn, and it was science fiction. I thought, I wonder what Colin Bunn will do with science fiction, and unfortunately, I hated this comic. Sorry, Colin Bunn, because I hated the artwork style, which I don't know, kind of reminded me of like something that maybe was based on some bad animation from the early 2000s or something, using early computer graphics animation or something. And the story just, I don't know, it's a kid's story, which isn't always bad for me. They do say all ages on it. I didn't notice that when I put it on my list. I was thinking of AWA as an adult comic book, a company focused on adult characters. But it just has this kind of cutesy kid story that I don't like. So that's already off my pull list. And Giga, I picked up number 2. I had mixed feelings about Giga number 1, but I'm a big fan of giant robots. So I thought I'd give Giga number 2 a chance. And I really struggled with reading this and what was going on and what I was supposed to care about and how they're thinking this society works. And The colors are nice, but I just wasn't much of a fan of the art, and maybe the colors didn't suit the art. I'm not sure, but this didn't work in a number of ways for me, and I very much felt like, where was the editor on this comic? And maybe that's the problem with Vault Comics. The connective tissue of the story was once again kind of missing, and it was pretty crucial stuff for me to make me interested in that comic. Also wondering where was the editor is on this DC's Very Merry Multiverse. I kind of picked this up off the shelves, didn't know it was coming out, with some excitement in my heart because I was going to read it with my daughter, and she and I both love the goofier, fun sides of the DC multiverse. And you had Captain Carrot on there, and well, not Lobo wasn't exciting, but Brother Power, the Freak, and the President Superman from one of the universes. Anyway, the cover just looked so fun, but most of the stories in here were, this was kind of the exception, most of the stories in here were kind of a mess, very difficult to parse what was going on, or just kind of dumb stories, and not always making clear what universe you're in, and the like. And just a lot, and I think, it's particularly disappointing because I think of something like this as for the general audience, right? Someone, hey, a fun Christmas comic that anyone could pick up and read some short stories about the DC multiverse. But really, no, it doesn't work that way. So many of these were horrible. A few were like this Lobo one where they're just put passages of quotes from the Bible in it, juxtaposed with something with Lobo killing a bunch of aliens who don't like dolphins. It was all quotes from the Maccabees 1, not a Bible passage I'm not familiar with. I was all excited for this Prez comic, and that was just almost random stuff. The Booster Gold story only made sense once you discovered halfway through that you were in the universe where Magog has brought down all the superheroes. And this Bizarro Planet one could have been good, but it was just kind of really hard to read. My favorite was actually this one, written by Solly Fish and art by Vanessa Del Rio. That was quite cool. Not as a friendly, easy to read comic, but for me as a more experienced reader of comics, it was quite cool. Although I don't know what sense it would make to someone who just said, hey, cool, a Christmas comic. The other one I liked quite a bit, where did it go, was this Gotham by Gaslight one involving E.L. O'Brien and Batman at Christmas time. I thought that was quite cool. But otherwise, a big disappointment. And you just really wonder, what is DC thinking when they put these together? And I kind of just thought, where is the editor just making sure people tell basic stories? And it should be so easy just to make some fun, goofy Christmas stories that can be enjoyed by the whole family. That didn't work out. Another comic in at number 9, Sword. I knew I might be in trouble because I'm not following what's going on in the X universe right now. After reading Hoxpox, the introductory Hoxpox special issues, I haven't read any further. But it was written by Al Ewing, and I love his Immortal Hulk so much, I thought I need to give this a try. I like the idea, the concept behind Sword. But the whole issue was just kind of walking around and talking with Magneto about Sword, and I got very bored and I had trouble getting through it. There was some cool imagery and the like. These things, these info dumps, I just didn't want to read them. I didn't want to get even more bored and stuck in it. I wasn't interested enough in what I was being given in the comic book part to read the text parts. And I don't know. None of the characters were appealing to me. I think Al Ewing was trying to be like Jonathan Hickman and have these cool, unemotional kind of plot device characters, but it just got nowhere for me. Yet I have not removed this from my pull yet, so I'll try issue 2. Unlike that small, what's it called, Little Bites, which I'm not even going to give an issue 2 to. And then starting in the ones that were more fun to read at number 8 was Penultiman, which is weaker than it should be, as I've said before, but it continues to be interesting. It's just, as a fan of kind of variations on the Superman myth, I wish it was a little better, but I enjoyed reading it. Red Mother, I think I've really enjoyed almost all of the previous 10 issues. This is the penultimate issue, I believe, and it was a bit of a letdown compared to my expectations. It was fine. It kind of moved along into kind of a standard set of horror tropes and scenes that I was expecting them to do some greater variation on that. Now, how I feel about Red Mother now will really depend on how that final issue comes out. That will shape the feeling of the whole story. It's been a fun experience reading issue by issue, but unless I really love that final issue, I'm not sure I can recommend it to anybody, say as a trade or pick up out of the back issues. Not, well, I should say, I would say it's feels like more of a standard horror story. I shouldn't say I would totally reject it. I had a lot of fun reading Crossover issue number 2, and I know Donny Cates is an overhyped writer, and I'm aware of that, so I'm lowering my expectations, and it's a fun comic to read. It's not like, it has a kind of plot that you might expect from, say, Grant Morrison or someone, and it's not at the level of the best of Grant Morrison or that sort of thing, but it's still fun to read, and it's nice to look at. I don't feel like Jeff Shaw's art's blowing me away as much here as it did in earlier comics I've read drawn by him. It's almost like he's gotten a little too slick, but definitely intrigued for what will happen next, and it's a fun read. It's a really nice, physically a really nice item too, so a good comic to be reading on a monthly basis, I feel. Excuse me. In at number 5, now starting to get to comics I really enjoyed a lot. I really enjoyed this Juggernaut a lot. A lot to do with the wonderful artwork by Ron Garney, but a very solid sort of superhero story written by Fabian Nicienza. Like I noted in the last issue, he's been building up to a lot of stuff, and now it's really fun. It's definitely a fun, light superhero Marvel Universe kind of read, but definitely a very high quality version of that kind of thing. So really glad to be reading that. And then a kind of a big surprise to me, I picked this up because someone online showed, I think maybe Paolo or another one of our European comic book community friends, showed a page or two from the European Frost Giant's daughter, the Cimmerian, because they can't put Conan on the cover, although the name Conan is all over the inside, which kind of confuses me in terms of the copyright laws in the United States, the trademarks, what have you. So I love Barry Smith's version of the Frost Giant's daughter, done back in the early 70s in Savage Tales, I believe, or Savage Sword of Conan. I think Savage Tales. And as I was reading this, I kept kind of wishing it was drawn by Barry Smith. And at first I was very doubtful because it's adding all this stuff that's not in the original story. But as I came to the end and realized that all the material in this first issue happens before the first line of the original story, before the first scene. We're leading up to that first scene, or we're getting the first sentence or two of the story, of the original story, on the last page of this issue. It really caught my interest. It may not be accurate to Robert E. Howard in spirit, because it changes the spirit by rewriting the story that way, and adding some meaning to what's going on with the Frost Giant's daughter. It does make me want to reread the prose story. I definitely will do that. They have included part of the prose story in here. Is there no copyright on the prose story? They haven't included the whole thing, but so I think I'll just dig up the whole thing in one of my Conan volumes and read it. I not totally. The art looks very fancy, like it's cool art, but I'm not totally sold on it as the best comic book art in terms of comic book storytelling and such. You can kind of make out what's happening and everything, but it's like the artist is more interested in his fancy special effects, so to speak, than clarity of storytelling, or even giving us the appropriate mood to the story. I mean, I'm being overly critical because I'm defending Barry Smith over this, I suppose. It's a very beautiful comic to look at. So anyway, I was surprised. I really enjoyed getting it, so I'm going to have to get the next issue. Part of me feels a little guilty somehow because I feel like this comic is breaking some United States intellectual property laws, even though those laws perhaps aren't as they should be. I don't know. Okay, and then as almost as always true, Usagi Yojimbo was a great issue. For some reason, there's no title up here of what the new story is, or saying how many issues it's going to be. But this is obviously at least a two-parter, and it's a bit of a a bit of a divergence from what I thought Usagi Yojimbo would be about, because he is meeting with some kind of mythological character that's immortal, and he's come to him for sword training. But it's a wonderfully paced and written story, and I really enjoyed it. And I can't quite see where it's going, which is nice. So, yeah, and now Usagi Yojimbo is no longer colored by Tom Luth, but by Hi-Fi Design. I don't know if Hi-Fi is one person or I'm presuming a studio. And I like the coloring is perfectly fine, but somehow I don't like the idea of being credited to a studio as opposed to a colorist. It just doesn't feel, the whole Usagi Yojimbo project feels like it's very personal and a group of people who've worked together forever. But I'm not really complaining. Hi-Fi is doing a great job. That coloring on the cover, those color choices on the cover are really nice. Yeah, and the colors on the cover are also by Hi-Fi. I was going to put this book at my number one, but at the last minute I changed my mind. I enjoyed Origins issue 1, but Origins issue 2 took it up to a next level in terms of a really interesting sci-fi story. A lot of elements in it remind me of science fiction prose stories that I really liked from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, as kind of the nature of things and the characters kind of unfold. And there's an intensity for me as a science fiction writer, there's certain science fiction elements that have a strong emotional resonance with me. And this one does, where humanity is gone, but one of this inventor's creations, I'm not sure if she's a biological creation or a robot or an android or some other creature, has brought her creator back in hopes that he can recreate the human race. And that is I just love that stuff. Now, whether I can really recommend Origins, because it's going to feel like a science fiction novella, I wouldn't recommend a science fiction novella to fellow readers until I'd read it to the end, right? So I loved reading this. Whether I will recommend it by the time I get to issue 6, we'll just have to see. And I loved the art, which is ironic because I think this kind of art I might complain about in another story, but it perfectly suited this story and just gave it that kind of science fiction fable of the future kind of feel that really resonates with me emotionally about science fiction. So yeah, one whole area of science fiction is just that sense of the last things. I suppose literary readers who just like the psychology of human characters don't care about the fate of the human race, but I find that a powerful, gripping thing. And kind of fable also, but in a completely different mode, and I really loved this Norse mythology. It's getting better with each issue, which makes me really happy. It's based on a Neil Gaiman book, but it's really scripted and laid out by P. Craig Russell, with then pencils and inks over the layouts done by, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Piotr Kowalski, who is an artist who's just gone unsung for too long. He's a really great artist. His last book was, what was it called? Accept the Future? No, Something the Future from Boom Books. And he's also worked on some Peter Milligan books from IDW or Boom. He's worked a teeny bit at Marvel. He did a Hulk miniseries once, but he's mostly been at Boom and DC and IDW. Aftershock. Aftershock was his last one. Boom and Aftershock and IDW and Dark Horse. This is like the first part of this really cool story about the Greek Norse gods, one that I am not familiar with, and I'm not sure where it's going, but you can sort of feel it's definitely going somewhere cool. Look how nice the colors are here too, by Laverne Kinderzewski. Another longtime person, a colorist who deserves more recognition, I believe. Obviously, P. Craig Russell realizes his value. P. Craig Russell, I assume, is the assembler of these art teams and the kind of person who's steering this whole project. So yeah, just a wonderful reading experience. I can't wait to the next issue to finish up this particular story. And my expectations now for this Norse mythology comic are being raised even higher than they already were. Really wonderful number one on my list. Well, let me quickly show you, because I got a lot of stuff at the comic book store today, and I'll just show you what I got. So from the back issue bins, I got some Alien Encounters. This is Alien Encounters number 9, Alien Encounters number 7. So I think it's a science fiction anthology comic from the 80s. And Alien Encounters number 8. And then off the shelf of the new trades, I picked up this new Junji Ito book. I haven't finished my first Junji Ito book. What's it called? Not Really Alive or something like that. Or Not Human, I think it's called. But I was really enjoying it. I put it aside because I was reading other stuff. So I saw this, and it has a really appealing cover. And it mentions the planet noticed our existence. Planet? That hooked me. So, and it's not too expensive for a hardback, and I just thought I'd grab it now, so I won't forget it later. So I got that, and then for the new comics, got a huge amount. Got Stillwater number 4. I think I still haven't read Stillwater number 3, so I better hurry up. Once and Future, one other favorite, number 14. Barb Alien, I guess I'm going to be in for the ride for this. I hadn't made up my mind with issue 1, but I think it's only 4 issues, I believe, so I'll do that. Oh, super excited for We Live. Really liked issue 1. Was really blown away by issue 2 of We Live. And of course, along with a great sci-fi story, it's great art and coloring, so that's awesome. a new Image comic called Post Americana by this incredible artist, Steve Scroce, who's also a very good writer. What was his book that he wrote from Image? Magistrix? No, something about magic. I can't remember. It was really good. And then the final issue of Batman's Grave. And after this, I'm not going to read any. This is my last Batman book for a long while. I've dropped all my other Batman books, and I just need a break from Batman. And we got this Immortal Hulk, King in Black one shot. I got it just because it's written by Al Ewing. I'm not getting any other King in Black books. Super excited for Night Hunters, a new book from Alexis Zirit, the artist loved by all of us who got Space Riders. So can't wait to see what this is from the quite obscure publisher Floating World Comics. And except Floating World Comics is a comic shop here in Portland, but I don't know if other comic book shops in Portland get their few comics they publish unless someone like me special orders them. Then we've got the sequel, or I think it's actually a prequel to Second Coming, Only Begotten Son. So this will probably be a big play on the whole Krypton myth and Superman, and I love that kind of thing. And very surprised to see Resonant back. It's been a long time, and I really liked the first, how many issues was it? This is issue 6, so the first 5 issues of Resonant were very intense. One of the best Vault comics I've read, so I hope it keeps up. And I hope they keep going for at least 5 more issues, if not more, and tell their whole story. And then here is the cover of the latest Immortal Hulk. So I've got two Immortal Hulk comics to dig into this week. That's quite a cover. Lots of bulging muscles for sure. And then another comic that I really like, and I think it may be about to wrap up, but I hope it isn't, Rye number 10. Someone told me it was going to be a 10-issue series, so we'll see. That's been one I've been enjoying more and more. And then another favorite, I think Big Girls has been, at least in the first 4 issues, really excellent. I like how the 5 is nice and big. And that's a one-man show from Jason Howard, who proves not to be only to be a great artist, but to be a very good writer. And then Peter Milligan's American Ronin, which I've also was, I think, my number 1 pick a few weeks ago. And then Psychodrama Illustrated by Gilbert Hernandez. I read issue 1 and thought it was bad. Sorry, because I usually love Gilbert. And then I don't know if I got issue 2. I have to look for it. Maybe it got better. And here is part 2 of Cutting Edge, which was also a really awesome comic. The only failing of it being that it's a reprint of a European album, so it's really squished down too small in this American-sized comic. But that's not all, folks. This week, another hardback from Brubaker and Phillips called Reckless, and it's a longer story. I think it's like 140 pages or so, compared to, like, what was it, their pulp may have been like 40 or 60 pages. So a real kind of original graphic novel. And then from the makers of The Creeps, they're now imitating Vampirilla with Vampiress Carmilla. And this should be good, cheesy fun. And finally, man, there's a lot of stuff. Heavy Metal, number 302. Sadly, I assume there will be no Richard Corbin in here, but that's a really cool cover. And there were other series from the last issue that I enjoyed that will be continuing, like this one about Lucy, the mother of all humanity. What else have we got here? Nothing else that I can immediately recognize, but some cool looking art. So, yeah, looking forward to continue my getting back into heavy metal phase. Okay, that's a lot of comics. I don't know how many of them I'll get around to reading and talking about in the next 4 or 5 days, but hopefully I'll do another countdown video. Talk to y'all later.